Welcome back, Sethbling here. Recently, I made Rocket League in Minecraft, but everything's a cube. In this video, I want to show you how I made Rocket League in Minecraft, but everything's a cube, but everything's a sphere. I started with this video by Phoenix SC about a resource pack that turns each block in your world into a sphere. I downloaded the resource pack, and I got the ball to look like this. The texture wasn't loading, but you can see how a bunch of very precisely sized boxes form the illusion of a sphere. It took me a while to figure out that I had to move files around in the resource pack to be compatible with 1.20.4, and I finally got the ball to render this gold texture. This texture has baked-in lighting and shine, which looks fine for a stationary sphere, but once the ball starts rotating, the lighting doesn't really make sense anymore. So I tried just putting the target texture on the ball, and it actually looks kind of okay, but you can see that the texture doesn't line up if you look at it from different angles. I tried editing the target texture so that it's just the outer border, and you get these cool rings on each side, but only when looked at from certain angles. To make the rings more solid, I wrote some code that would calculate the exact size of the inner ring to add to the texture to make it line up. With that done, the ball looks like a pretty faithful adaptation of the target block to a spherical model. Next, I needed to adapt the player heads to look more spherical. My inspiration here was Monkey Ball. I wanted it to look like the player head was encapsulated inside a glass sphere. My first attempt at a texture looked like this, an adaptation of the stained glass texture. However, when I actually tried it, it looked like this. The problem is that the alpha layer renders on each of the boxes that make up the sphere, so you have dozens of partially transparent textures rendering in front of each other, which looks basically opaque. So next I tried something a little simpler. Mostly transparent pixels with a circular border. It looked like this. Not bad, sort of a gimbal effect. I tried adding a cross to the texture to line up to the perpendicular rings, but again ran into issues with how the sphere model was actually a ton of boxes. This texture worked to convey rotation, but I didn't like how hard it was to see the player head, and it just looked really messy in general. Finally, I had the genius idea to use this texture for the ball. It looks like it's a totally transparent image, but actually every pixel is an alpha value of 1 out of 255. This is what it looks like in-game with an outline effect applied. The pixels of the texture are transparent enough that you can't see them in-game, but opaque enough that the outline treats them as full pixels and renders correctly. With the visuals out of the way, I coded up the spherical physics. After about 8 hours of trying to get the visuals right, it actually took less than an hour to do the physics. The only thing I actually needed to modify was the collisions, and it turns out sphere collisions are really easy. For a plane, you just check if the distance from the center of the sphere to the plane is less than the radius of the sphere. And for two spheres, you just check if the distance between their centers is less than the sum of their radii. And that was it. Sphere mode was done. There were a few other features I wanted to add at this point. I added demolitions. When two players from opposing teams collide, whoever's going faster will demolish the other player as long as their speed is above 1 meter per second. When you get demolished, you respawn immediately in front of your team's goal, but your boost meter is empty and you don't start recharging it for 3 seconds. I found it's a good balance of fun without being too frustrating. The game now keeps track of who the last player was to touch the ball on each team, and now when you score a goal, it displays your name as part of the message. If you hit it into your own goal, it'll display that too. Oops. The game calculates the trajectory of the ball, and if it's going to go into the goal within the next second but gets deflected, it'll display a message saying who made the save. If the ball just barely misses the goal, it'll display who took the shot and how much they missed by. When the timer is up for the game, it now waits until the ball hits the ground before actually ending the game. This is a feature that's pulled straight out of Rocket League. If the game ends in a tie, now there's overtime, and whoever scores the first goal wins. I also added particle effects and sounds when the player hits the ball. And finally, I fixed a really large bug with the way the player controls their vehicle. The game has a braking system that's designed to help you come to a stop quickly. If you accelerate opposite the direction you're moving, we call it deceleration. Your deceleration is boosted to a maximum of 2 times what your acceleration would be if you were just trying to go forward. The more your deceleration deviates from straight backwards, the less that deceleration is boosted. The bug is that instead of scaling between 1x and 2x deceleration, it was scaling between 0x and 2x. What that means is that if you were trying to strafe sideways relative to your motion, Sometimes your ability to accelerate at all was being completely removed. This made it very hard to fine-tune shots and positioning relative to the ball on your approach, and after fixing the bug, it feels like you have way more control. With all these changes, I've uploaded version 1.2 of Blocket League, and you can download it and play it right now. There's a link in the video description. If you put it on a server, there's also a download link to the Sphere resource pack that you can put in the server.properties in order to make the pack easy to download for anyone who wants to connect to your server. That's about it. Thanks for watching.